Well, good afternoon, everyone. Most of us, or at least all of us here, and I think a lot of people this week are celebrating National Police Week. It's the week when we honor those who serve us in law enforcement. And I think it's safe to say that we need law enforcement officers in this country. We need them to apprehend violent criminals. We need them to keep our border safe, to ensure that our immigration laws are being enforced, to protect these buildings. We need law enforcement officers. And tragically, this calendar year already, there have been 38 law enforcement officers who have been killed in the line of duty. And so this is a week when we honor them and we express our gratitude and appreciation to them and to their families for all that law enforcement does in this country to keep our country and our communities safe. The Democrats, on the other hand, as has been very clear for some time, seem to be very comfortable with allowing this defund law enforcement, defund police movement with which they've been associated for some time now to continue, and have blocked funding for the Department of Homeland Security, for ICE, for Customs and Border Patrol, the folks who keep our border safe and secure, and have been blocking it now for several months. And as a consequence, we will have to move forward, and we will next week, with the Secure America Act, which is a bill that will fund those critical law enforcement agencies and ensure that they're funded not only today, but into the future through the duration of President Trump's term. So, like I said, I think it's shameful that we are even having to have a conversation like this, but we have a Democrat Party that has embraced the ideas of open borders and defunding the police. And as a consequence of that, we're having to deal in a way that allows us to do this with Republican votes, because Republicans have law enforcement's back, and we will do everything that we can to ensure that they have all they need to keep our country, our border, and our communities safe. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So you just had a lunch for that Secret Service director had joined. Can you shed some light on what the conversation was, and also where you think your conference is with regard to giving $1 billion for the bar?
Right. So the question I think that he was addressing was how is the money going to be used, the $1 billion. And so he walked through the various categories, and about 20% of that is going to be used to secure the modernization of the East Wing. Most of it's going to be used for other purposes, training facilities, for technology, lots of other things that law enforcement, particularly in this case Secret Service, needs to ensure that they keep our president and other top officials safe. So it was a good back and forth, a good discussion, and obviously we had a lot of questions that were asked by our colleagues, just to get the details and precision as much as possible about how dollars are going to be used. And I think that the director did a very good job of laying it out and developing the case for why these resources need to be used to update, modernize, and make sure the security service is capable of doing its job. Or Secret Service, I should say. Yeah.
Are you confident that the $1 billion for ballroom security, White House security, will survive a Byrd rule challenge in front of the parliamentarian?
Well, we're having those discussions. As you all know, the parliamentarian who evaluates any proposal under reconciliation, we have a back and forth, and that's underway right now. So we are having the, quote, Byrd scrub, and making the arguments in front of the parliamentarian. The Democrats obviously doing their best to try and undermine anything that we're trying to accomplish here. But I'm pretty confident based on past experience, because we dealt with this significantly, in a significant way I should say, last summer during the Working Families Tax Cuts legislation. Some of these funding issues came up then, and there was a formula, frankly, that was put in place by the Democrats with the two reconciliation bills that they did when they had unified control of the government, that has given us the roadmap, if you will, to get this done. So I'm confident that we will be in good shape, but that process right now is underway.
Where are Senate Republicans at currently on getting the Save America Act passed? There was quite a bit of momentum on that a few weeks back. It seems like it sort of dwindled despite overwhelming support from the American people. Where do you stand on that currently? Would you reconsider getting rid of the filibuster to get it across the finish line?
We don't have the votes to get rid of the filibuster. We called it up on the floor March, I think, 17th. We were on it for several weeks and had a very spirited debate. In fact, I think with the exception of maybe a couple of Republican senators, made more speeches on the floor in support of the SAVE Act than almost any other senator. And we had some votes on it. And we voted on the narrow issue, which is the most popular one, of voter ID. And we put the Democrats on the record. Every single Democrat voted against it. We added, and one of the other elements, also popular, was whether or not biological boys ought to play in girls' sports. We had that vote, and every Democrat voted against that as well. So we've taken what I think are probably the two issues, in my view, that have the broadest public support and put the Democrats on record, and every single one of them voted against it. So we'll look for opportunities to get other votes. There was a vote on the budget resolution, an amendment that Senator Kennedy offered that didn't even get 50 votes on the floor. And so we're continuing to look for opportunities to advance that legislation. Obviously, it's something that I support. I think we all support, and we think it's something that the American people are broadly supportive of as well.
There's ballroom funding between on the courts about whether or not the ballroom can be constructed, and they've been asking for some kind of congressional authorization to move forward with the courts have. Do you consider this $1 billion in this reconciliation bill to be the congressional authorization that the courts would need to be able to go forward with the construction of the ballroom in these things?
If this gets litigated, you're talking about?
Yeah, well, so if this gets passed, do you see this as the congressional authorization needed that that would be good enough
The courts.
to be able to be okay with going forward with constructing the ballroom?
Well, I mean, I think that the ballroom is being financed privately, but the security associated with it is, I think, represents about 20% of what this request was. This Secret Service request, which frankly does fit perfectly within the confines of the legislation on the floor because it's the Judiciary Committee's jurisdiction. Most of that's going to go to other things. It's going to be used for training. It's going to be for updates in technology, for the number of protectees that they have to deal with is ensuring that they have the resources to cover those people. So it's a request, much of which would be dealt with during the normal appropriations process, but because the Democrats won't allow for a normal appropriations process, is being done through reconciliation. But my assumption would be that if Congress authorizes something like this, that I assume the courts would uphold it. It's essentially us Republicans doing the work that the Appropriations Committee would normally do, and did, by the way, and reported a bill out favorably, which the Democrats subsequently walked away from, and then held up and shut down the government for 60 days or thereabouts over funding for these two agencies. So again, I think this is a perfectly normal way. It's not normal, but it's certainly within the confines of what we are allowed to do to get funding for this important agency done, given the obstruction that the Democrats have posed in their unwillingness to fund law enforcement.
Are you supportive of a gas tax holiday?
Am I?
Are you supportive of it?
Well, I'm listening. I mean, I think right now, you probably know I've not in the past been a huge fan of previous attempts, although when this was tried during the Biden administration, gas prices were going up largely in response to the Biden energy policies. This obviously is a very different set of circumstances, but if the president wants to make that case, I think we're all willing to hear it. We've had some of our colleagues who've come out in support of repealing, or at least temporarily repealing, the gas tax, but obviously that has implications for the Highway Trust Fund, and so those are things that you have to take into consideration as well. And the question, of course, I always ask is, if you did, it's 18.4 cents, I think, is the federal gas tax. If you lifted that, does that ultimately get passed on to the consumer, to the customer, to the buyer out there, or does it get sucked up in the supply chain somewhere? So I think those are all fair questions to ask, but it's a conversation that I think we're willing to have, and I'm certainly willing, and I think most of our colleagues are, to hear the president's arguments if that's a case he wants to make to Congress. Thank you all. Thanks.